So, what if I told you that the most powerful guide that you've ever had isn't in a book? It's not a guru, it's not a mentor, and it's not even your 5 year plan, but your own intuition. That's right, your gut instinct. And what if I told you that science can actually back it up? Well, today I am combining ancient wisdom with neuroscience to show you why trusting in your intuition will be the best decision you have ever made. No matter how chaotic or uncertain life gets, you can always lean on your inner wisdom, your intuition. So stick around because you are going to want to hear this because we're going beyond what you've been told about logic and intuition to help you uncover profound truths and gain inner wisdom. Hello there, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another Mindful Monday. I'm your girl, Arika Trimnell. That's right, the Mindful Mistress is here with you today. I'm here to offer you a unique perspective that really helps both of us grow through our limitations, breaking through that prism so we can uncover our authentic self. In last week's episode, we talked about embracing uncertainty, and we talked about letting go of this illusion that we have about security and what security actually means. Today, I want to really expand upon that as I approach the topic of intuition, but from a different angle, one that blends spirituality and science, because we love exploring the power of science and intuition. We love mixing ancient wisdom with science and understanding it at a deeper level. So we're going to dive into how intuition is not only just a real thing, but an incredibly useful and accurate tool that we can use to make decisions in our life, especially during high pressure situations and uncertain times. So let's start with a simple question. What exactly is intuition? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you think what intuition is, because many people describe it as a gut feeling or a knowing. It could be a voice, a message you get, but intuition is really much more deeper than that. When we talk about it from the woo-woo or the metaphysical perspective, intuition is often described as a deep, just inner knowing, a connection with your higher self, a way for you to channel information and access wisdom beyond our own logic and beyond reason. It's believed that this insight or guidance really transcends the physical mind, and many view intuition as a direct connection with the universe, with the source, or collective consciousness, if you will. This ability allows us to just tap into that universal truth. The Akashic records, you might have heard of that, one way of tapping into this universal truth, aka intuition. So in this view of intuition, it's really a bridge between the material and the spiritual world. It's the voice of the soul for some people. It's the guiding light that illuminates a path for us to follow to our life's purpose and helping us to navigate difficult decisions with truth that aligns to our higher self. So this perspective on intuition really goes beyond the rational thought and comes from a place of divine wisdom, often manifesting as our feelings, sometimes flashes of insight. I know for me, it is just a knowing, and something drops in. It's like, okay, intuition says to do this. But when we think about intuition from a scientific perspective, that viewpoint is not really mystical, but rather a really, really, really complex cognitive process. So this comes from neuroscience, and neuroscientists really describe intuition as your brain's unique and badass ability to make very fast and accurate judgments by drawing on memories, patterns, experience, everything that's kind of stored in the subconscious mind all at once. So essentially, it's about taking vast amounts of data and information from our lived experience thus far, what's lived just in our subconscious, just below our awareness, and being able to utilize this. Some of you are familiar, and I've talked about it before, but our RAS. Our RAS is our reticulating activating system, reticular activating system. And the way our RAS works is because there's so much information coming at us all at once. What it does is it helps us kind of weed out all of the noise, if you will, and focus on whatever it is that has our attention in that moment. Now, for some of us, it's a lot easier or harder than others. But I talk about the RAS because it doesn't mean that information doesn't get processed, but it's just not in the forefront. It's just not the materials, not the data, the information that is necessary for us in that moment. So this is where the scientific perspective of intuition actually comes into play, because we're still taking in all this information, whether it's through our senses, what we're touching, what we're seeing out of our peripherals, what our bodies are taking in at the moment. It is being processed behind the scenes. Granted, we may not be using it in this moment, but behind the scenes. So this is the gut-brain connection, which really plays a crucial role here. And if we, as I'm saying that, I think about because how important what we put in our bodies. As a side note, what we put in our bodies and how we maintain the biome of our gut actually does play a part in this. And as a side note, so does the trauma. So think about it, because if we're looking at intuition from the scientific perspective, if we are taking a collection of all of our memories, experiences, and processes that we have observed throughout our entire life and using it in an instant, regardless of whether or not that those things are actually at play right now, trauma does play a part when we think about intuition from a spiritual perspective. But don't worry, I'm not going to cover it now. I'm going to cover it. I think I'm going to cover it next week, but helping us to understand what is intuition versus trauma response. But anyways, back to what we're talking about. The body, especially the gut, contains all of these beautiful neurons that communicate directly with our brain. Remember, I've talked about this countless times, how there are more signals coming from our bodies to our brains than our brains to our body. We have more afferent nerves than efferent nerves. I think, yes. So we got more A's than we've got E's. A's come first because I remember my name starts with an A. A's come first, and we've got more of them. So we are constantly sensing our environment through our bodies at a greater magnitude than our brain is sending signals back. So when we think about this, thinking about like gut feeling, this is something that we've all heard of, and some of us have even experienced this gut feeling, but it's really our brains, because there's so many neurons. It's kind of our brains. I mean, our gut, because there's so many neurons, actually acts as a second brain. So it becomes another processing center for subconscious information like environmental cues or emotional memories. These send signals that can manifest as actual physical reactions. Maybe you feel calm, maybe you feel tense, maybe you've got butterflies in your stomach. So studies in neuroscience also show that our brains are capable of recognizing patterns in our environment long before the conscious mind is aware of what the heck is going on. So this is why our intuition can sometimes be a lifesaver, right? If we think about instincts and being able to react at a split second or under high pressure situations, this immediate sense of just knowing is so beneficial. But again, like I had mentioned before, the caveat I will say here is when and if we have experienced trauma in our lifetime, because sometimes that thing that we think is actual knowing and intuition is really just a trauma response. But like I said, we'll get into that later. So this is just assuming that all of us have had a very beautiful life, or we went through life with rose-colored glasses. No, I know that is not the case. But this, let's say, we'll assume from the scientific perspective, we have all done the work and we have healed. We don't have any unresolved trauma. So use that caveat as I go on to talk about intuition. But the funny thing about intuition is it's often ignored. So you don't have to raise your hand, but I will certainly call myself out because I love being vulnerable with you. I have nothing to hide. I have had issues with just ignoring my intuition. And it is something that I am actively working on. Funny enough, not too long ago, a few weeks ago, I was talking to a very dear friend of mine who is an intuitive healer, if you will. And we were talking about intuition, and the message she got was that I have some blockages there. So needless to say, that is something that I am definitely working on. But there are levels. Just like this life is a journey, there are situations or aspects of situations or circumstances that we might have healed from, but that's just only a small portion of the larger pie, if you will. So, anyways, I say that because I am someone who I don't want to say suffers from. What's a more appropriate word? I am someone who has often ignored her own intuition and has been able to observe the consequences of not paying attention to our intuition. But the crazy thing is, again, this can go back to our childhood. One of the reasons why we may not acknowledge our intuition is that a lot of us, especially depending on the culture, if there's a cultural aspect, a lot of us were really taught and told to ignore our intuition and rely really more on reason and logic, which I think is I won't say totally crazy, but as I get older, I've learned that there's no such thing as a rational human being, regardless of sex, but yet we live in a system that promotes this. That just makes sense. That's common sense. That's logic. That's reason. We promote all this, but yet it's so funny because when we think about social media, when we think about entertainment, when we think about like even YouTube, all of these things play off the fact that we are not logical beings because they play to our emotions, they play to the hormones, they play to the dopamine hit that we get. And then that keeps us coming back. They play on the fact that we are not rational, logical human beings, but yet society has this paradoxical view that, oh, you should be logical. Well, that makes sense. Why didn't you just do that, right? Because we aren't. We are emotional creatures. We are hormonal creatures, whether or not we want to admit it. So most of us have been conditioned in childhood to not believe into our intuition or not trust our intuition and look for outside advice, outside validation, outside everything, right, to make a decision. So you might think that you can't explain it or you can't analyze it. And if you can't do any of these things, then it's not valid and you shouldn't make that decision. And I get it because again, I live here in this world too, right? I understand it. I see constantly all the time how the world that we live in, the society that we live in values evidence, values predictability, values structure. But the thing about it is, your intuition, your inner knowing, it's not just, it really isn't just some spiritual woo thing. It's something that actually is rooted in biology, which if I go back to is biology, which is rooted in structure, which is rooted in evidence, which is rooted in predictability, right? So again, we have this paradoxical, or you could say kind of the dichotomy of the science of intuition against kind of our own practices and what we truly believe. Um, so studies have actually shown that intuition, it is a real thing. It isn't just this woo-woo thing. It's something that is actually a measurable phenomenon. So if you are ever dismayed that your gut feeling is maybe something to be ignored and you rather lean towards logic, I hope that in our talk, in our conversation today, I'm able to provide you a different perspective on how to look at intuition, or when you have that next gut feeling, what's going in it, what's going on there. So again, back to kind of the science aspect of it again. And I do this, and the reason why I do this in most of my videos, I bring the science into it, is because I know as a society we like to have proof, we like to have things that are predictable, we like the safe, we like the consistency. So I'm constantly trying to weave in science. Also, my undergrad's in biology, so I love data and information. So when we talk about intuition, again, is that the neuroscience aspect where we talk about the gut feeling, where we've got our gut that has all these neurons. Again, our neurons are acting as a second brain because they're storing all these environmental cues. Excuse me. I don't know what I ate, guys. So I apologize. So this can be how we experience intuition as a body, as a somatic incidence, or somatic event. This isn't something that is random by any means. This is just the way our brains are able to recognize patterns and deliver quick subconscious insights. Again, when I talked about self-care being more than just a checklist, self-care is a conversation, I have this in mind because I know that by tapping into your body's intuition, by tapping into your own intuition, you can actually have this dialogue with your body by listening and understanding and being able to decipher the signals that our bodies are providing to us. So your intuition is really your brain connecting the dots a lot faster than your conscious mind can actually process the event. And there's actually a study that was done by the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience, where it showed that people who relied on their intuition were more successful at making quick and accurate decisions under high pressure. So again, this supports the narrative that leaning into that intuition, leaning into that gut feeling can actually have results that are more positive and supportive for whatever it is that you are using it or leveraging it for. So science supports it. Of course, us in the woo-woo community, we're all about the feels and intuitions and tapping into our higher self. Intuition is something that I've definitely experienced firsthand. There have been so many moments in my life where I have used logic and external advice. And meanwhile, my intuition was like, yeah, no, you probably shouldn't do that, or told me something completely different. I remember a particular decision that I made where my intuition was like, no, but on paper, the numbers, the partnership, everything was like, yes, like this looked good. Even, when I would go to consult my friends or my family about this particular opportunity, everyone was like, this is a no-brainer. This makes sense. This helps you further your goals. But something deep down inside my intuition was like, no. And so, because I had this kind of nagging feeling that something wasn't right, something just wasn't aligned, although I couldn't physically see it in the paperwork or didn't have it really reflected back to me in my environment, I said no. And I said no because when I sat down with that decision, I really, really, really felt an uneasiness and a tension in my body. And I knew that it was my intuition at the time. I knew my intuition was trying to tell me that, regardless of how this looks on paper, you're going to look back at this decision and wish you had chosen something else. And I didn't want to be stuck in a decision that I knew could potentially drain me and wasn't really in alignment on a higher level, right? Maybe in that moment everything looked great and it's something like, yeah, I should have jumped on, and but in the overall where I'm trying to go, that just my body was like, no. So ways that you yourself can kind of tap into what's going on and how to leverage your own intuition is one, quiet the noise. Quiet the noise you hear around you. How do we start tuning into our intuition when everything is so chaotic around us, where we're getting messages constantly, where, we are so addicted to that dopamine hit? You find ways to quiet the noise, and quieting the external noise could be turning off social media, turning off the TV, not having endless streams of news and information constantly bombarding your system, because that can affect your energy. Your intuition is something, at least from my perspective, that really speaks softly. And so with everything coming at us at full speed at, volume 100, it can be hard to decipher or to hear intuition when it's there, or sense that, the tenseness in my chest is coming from the situation that I'm comfortable with versus what I hear on the radio or what I hear streaming from YouTube. So in creating these spaces, and spaces for silence, or spaces, the power of the pause, you might hear, really help you tune in and tap into your intuition. And from a scientific perspective, it really just helps calm your nervous system, so that in that relaxed kind of alpha state, you're able to get those intuitive insights versus being at a hyper aroused state by all of these things being bombarded at you. Another thing that you can do is start to recognize little nudges. One of the biggest misconceptions about intuition is that it only shows up in life-changing decisions. That is wrong. Your intuition shows up all of the time, but are we listening all of the time? Are we actively paying attention to the nudges, to the gut feelings, to the just knowing, to the, I've heard so many, oh my gosh, it makes me think of, you hear people after a tragic event saying, for whatever reason, I didn't take the same road to work that day. And I come to find out that there was an accident, or, something tragic happened. In all honesty, I was, before the hurricane was going to use the time to drive up. If you've ever been to the Blue Ridge Mountains and seen the beautiful fall foliage, it is a sight to see, with all the beautiful colors and the leaves, and it's just amazing. And so that was something that I had planned, and my plans had got interrupted. And of course, me being in a little resistance to the change was like, no, 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 no. And then the hurricane hit, and just absolute devastation in western part of North Carolina. So imagine if I had been that Aries that I can be, and just like, nope, my way, and had gone up there, had driven up there, regardless. You never know. So start by just trusting in those little nudges. When you get a little nudge, follow it. Or if you don't want to follow it, write it down. Write down what it was, write down the situation, and then write down what happened. So that way you can start building your own journal of proof to help you trust in your own intuition more often, because now you can look at this piece of paper and say, oh my God, look at all these instances where this was the message, or this was the nudge that I felt. This was the route that I took, which was against the message, and this was the outcome, right? And then maybe you get the courage to, this was the nudge that, was told to me, or how I felt, and I listened, and then this was the outcome. And so again, you can be your own little scientist and uncover what that is for you. Another thing is um, building building balance between your intuition and your logic. And what I'm not saying here is that you should completely throw logic out of the window. Both intuition and logic have a place and have roles. The key is learning which to rely on in what case. Logic is so great for analyzing data, for planning, for making, step-by-step decisions. However, intuition is essential in dealing with complexity and dealing with uncertainty, or when maybe you just don't have all the information laid out in front of you. So something that you can do when you're faced with a very difficult decision is start by gathering all of the facts, right? So start by being analytical and start by being logical. And once you've done all this, you can step back and then just tune into your body's wisdom. Does it create a sense of expansion when you think about all the data that you have here before you? Or does it create a sense of contraction? Another thing that I literally just told my friend to do this the other day. She was trying to decide on, it wasn't a complex decision, but she was trying to decide on basically her next right step. And so I said, hey, why don't we use your body for this? And when you think of, option A, do you notice yourself leaning in towards it? Like your body is gravitating towards option A, or is your body feel like it's being pushed back, like someone's pushing you away from option A? So I had her do that for option A, and then her body pushed back, just in case for those of you who are nosy and want to know. And then for option B, I said, okay, what about option B? And so I had her do the same thing. Like, are you being called towards it? Okay. Or are you being called back from it? That's another way to play around with intuition and using your body, using a somatic marker to help you make that decision. So researchers have found that your body is always sending you cues, and your body reacts best when you give it the space, when you give it the opportunity to tell you what it is, right? Are you feeling more nervous? Are you feeling that contraction? Are you feeling the expansion? Does this feel light, or does this feel heavy? So there's a lot of different ways that you can use and play around with somatics in your bodies and making a decision. But there's nothing wrong with getting all the data first, right? Seeing it and then tapping into your intuition, to your body, and seeing what happens from there. Another thing is, when you're under pressure, trust it. Trust your intuition. Trust that gut feeling. I cannot say that enough. Under high pressure situations, it's highly likely that your body and brain are doing so much work behind the scenes that you're not realizing, and especially when we are stressed and let's say we are hyper aroused. Your intuition can be your very best friend here, because allow it to do its processing, because it can deliver quick and accurate insight, which we learned today based on the study, right? If you're in a higher pressure situation, lean to your intuition. If it's maybe not a high pressure situation and you have time to look at all the data, gather it, and then tap in, then do that. But if it's like, we need to make a decision now, or you are stressed out, like right now, especially after like the hurricane and life just lifing and new moon and then harvest moon and all of the things under the chaos, I am leaning more into my intuition. And I am grateful for that, because then that's one less thing that I have to manually process. So in this chaotic and high energy environment, I don't have to panic. I could stop choosing to panic and lean in and listen to my intuition. So those are just a few tips that I've learned in my journey as far as how to help with tapping in and leaning to intuition and understanding what to use in different situations. Is it logic or intuition? And to even kind of expand on that further, after this conversation I had with my girlfriend, so like I'm being completely vulnerable here, and we uncovered that, I have some blockage with regards to intuition. I kid you not, this was not even 24 hours after having this conversation with her. I counted at least 4 different times where I heard my intuition, like, because for me, I get a knowing. I don't get a gut feeling. I don't feel it in my gut. I get that knowing. I had 4 different times. My intuition definitely told me to go right. And me being the happy-go-lucky Aries, I'm going to have it my way anyway, said, nope, we're going to go left. Yeah. And then what ended up happening is the situation leaned towards, solution right. And I was like, yep. Thank you, universe, higher self, for showing me that, yep, I'm not listening to my intuition, that I definitely have a blockage. And what is this about? And it's something that I need to work on. So, what the experience taught me, and of course, it didn't happen once, 4 times afterwards, and it's so funny because I think that oftentimes we ignore intuition and don't realize we're ignoring it. This was times where clearly I had so much awareness. It was sickening. I knew that this was intuition. I knew it was. And I still was like, no, sir, no, ma'am. We're going to do something else. Yeah, look what happened. But anywho, so hopefully you learn from me, right? That experience has definitely taught me that, one, my intuition is active. I know she right. And 2, that I am and can be a stubborn Aries and do my own will anyway. So see, I struggle too. So, another lesson could be just in surrendering. Surrendering, like what we talked about last week, it's such a powerful, profound thing. And it's hard for people who have issues with control. That's something that I sometimes deal with too, is, no, that's why I didn't go right, because I wanted left to happen, really. But what made sense and what was in my highest interest was actually right. So surrendering is another thing that you can do to help you tap into the intuition. And so I hope that our Mindful Monday today about, intuition really help just build on what we talked about last week when it comes to dealing with uncertainty. So you can deal with uncertainty better when you know that you have intuition, when you have a guide, when you have someone who's better than a guru, somewhere better than a mentor, a 5-year plan, whatever, who's got your back. You don't need a guaranteed outcome. You just need to trust that your inner wisdom is leading you exactly where you need to be. And science tells us that there's fact, that there is evidence behind the way that our bodies and minds process things that we aren't aware of. So intuition simply is a result of us being badasses and having a mind and body that work for us. If we look at it from the science perspective, or our higher self that work for us, in a universe that works for us versus against us. So allowing us to just more easily trust and lean into uncertainty and uncertain situations. So, as we close for today, I really want to hope that this was helpful. I hope that this invites you to tap into your intuition and know that it's not just a spiritual woo-woo concept, that it's something that is actually backed by science, that our brain does guide us through very complex life situations, especially when we feel uncertain or burdened. Hopefully this is something that can carry you through your week. May you have a less complex burdening situations. And if you do, that you invite your intuition to step in and take the reins, knowing that you are going to be in alignment with your highest self. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me. I am eternally grateful for your presence, for your energy, for your commitment, for you listening to me, heart, for the wisdom that you provide. Now, go out there and be true to yourself, because both science and your spirit are on your side. And if this message at all resonated with you, please like, share, subscribe, put some stuff in the comments. I love to keep the conversation going. I will see you next week, beautiful souls. Sending you lots of love, light, and courage to trust your inner wisdom. Bye.